For the past 8 years, on the 14th of every month, I visited the city's largest orphanage. I would bring toys and clothes for the children, hiding my tears behind their laughter, and secretly blaming myself for not being awake that fateful night. Everyone told me to stop torturing myself. My husband, Farhan, had tried to reason with me many times, saying it was impossible for our 5-year-old daughter, Aisha, to survive the brutal robber attack on our home that night. The police reports, the photos of the burned-out vehicle, and the court's final verdict. Everything pointed to the same tragic fact. Aisha was gone forever. But on one rainy evening, a few whispered words from an old security guard turned my 8 years of agonizing grief into a deep, chilling mystery. I was walking toward my car after leaving the orphanage when the elderly guard, who had worked there for years, blocked my path. His hands were trembling, and his face was pale with fear. Looking around nervously, he whispered in a low voice, "Ma'am, Aisha didn't die that night. She was sold." Hearing those words, my heart ended up in my throat. "What are you talking about?" I screamed. But before he could say another word, the terrified guard panicked, ran into the darkness, and vanished within seconds. I stood there, frozen in shock. Was this a sick joke? But the sheer terror in the old man's eyes was unmistakable. For the next several nights, sleep eluded me. The horrifying events of that night, 8 years ago, replayed constantly in my mind. I had been out of town on a business trip when I received a frantic call from Farhan, claiming that robbers had raided our house and abducted Aisha in our car. Later, the police found the vehicle torched in the woods, and it was assumed Aisha was inside. Farhan was shattered by the grief. Our business collapsed, and we eventually left the city. But now, a dark doubt had taken root in my heart. The next day, I returned to the orphanage to find the guard, only to learn he had abruptly quit his job and returned to his village. I refused to give up tracking him through his old employee records. I finally reached his mud brick house in a remote village. When I knocked on the door, and he stepped out, all the color drained from his face. "For God's sake, tell me the truth," I pleaded, folding my hands before him. "Where is my daughter?" The old guard broke down in tears. He confessed that 8 years ago, at midnight, an expensive car had pulled up to the orphanage. A man stepped out, handing over a young girl and a bag stuffed with cash to the manager. The guard had witnessed the exchange from the shadows and recognized the man's face. He was no robber. When I showed him a photograph of my husband, Farhan, with shaking hands, the guard nodded through his tears. "Yes, ma'am, that was the man." From that night, he sold his own daughter to a wealthy foreign couple and lied to you about her death, just to clear his mounting business debts. The ground slipped beneath my feet. The man whose grief I had comforted for 8 long years was the very monster who had bartered our child. Gathering my shattered resolve, I enlisted the help of honest police officers and legal experts. We dug up 8-year-old bank accounts, hidden orphanage registries, and flight data of foreign families who had left the city. During that window, the trail of evidence eventually led us to a quiet town in another country. Farhan had completely altered Aisha's name and identity before handing her over to a couple who had absolutely no idea her biological mother was still alive. Aisha had grown up believing her birth parents had died in a tragic accident. When investigators finally located the family and verified Aisha's identity with solid documentation, my soul shook. My daughter was alive, and she was now 13 years old. Following weeks of intense legal proceedings, I was finally granted permission to meet my daughter in the private chambers of a family court. When the door opened and she stepped inside, she was much taller than the toddler I remembered, but her eyes and her smile belonged unmistakably to my Aisha. At first, she didn't recognize me and shrank back in fear. But then, I placed her favorite childhood toy, the one I had safely kept for 8 years, on the table, and began singing the lullabies I used to soothe her with when she was a baby. Tears welled up in her eyes. She ran across the room and threw her arms around me. "Mama," she wept. 8 years of separation vanished in a single, breathless moment. When the truth was laid bare to the world, Farhan's sinister face was completely unmasked. The law dealt him a severe punishment for his crimes, and the relatives who once dismissed me as unstable stood silent and ashamed in the face of the facts. Today, Aisha is back by my side. We still occasionally pass by that old orphanage, but our eyes no longer hold tears, only peace. Sometimes, a quiet whisper from an old witness can bring the heaviest truth to light, and a mother's hope will always triumph, even when the world insists everything has turned to ash. My friends, a mother's love and unwavering hope shattered the strongest wall of lies after 8 long years. If this story touched your heart, please like the video and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more heartbreaking and powerful true stories. Today's question: do you think a father could ever trade his own daughter for his failing business? Farhan was punished by the law, but in your opinion, what is the ultimate punishment for a parent like him? Share your thoughts in the comment box below. I'll be waiting to read your replies.